Once again, the larger priority items, I think the Commissioners Court sort of setting the direction for, and we're wanting to agree that's the path moving forward, our game plan. And then that second part that we looking at it section by section, what things do we need to go ahead and take a look at and make sure that we update in the current document to reflect those overarching things and just general things that we need to improve. So, oops, oh, sorry. I think I can do this here. Clicked a little too fast. So where we are here, of course, is September 5th, having this discussion today. And so what we'd like to do is, of course, we're taking notes about everything. And if you have thoughts later this week or something like that, please reach out to county staff, and they'll get with us and we'll talk. And so what we'll do is, if we could get your comments basically by the end of next week, and of course everything that we talk about here, what we'll do is we'll revise this document and then come meet with you again on October 10th just to see if you have any changes or if there's anything else that you've thought about. But what we'd like to do is, if there's anything that's glaring, we want to fix it to make sure it's exactly how you guys think is appropriate and the best path for the county moving forward. So we'll send you a new draft, and then we'll meet to discuss that. And that will really finalize the document. And then we'll make any final revisions. And then if we meet on the 10th and we're pretty good, it doesn't take us to November 7th to get the document back to you, and we can be done. And then what that really sets you up for is say, okay, we now know basically everything we want to do in this subdivision update. So we can do these things that we've called out in this report. We can fix these things in all these different sections, and we're ready to go. So this document's going to really give you the leg up on going ahead and getting everything identified, because we're all on the same page. Because what happens in some subdivision updates when we don't go through this process, like how we're doing it now, we want to bring everyone on board slowly. I mean, it's important stuff where everyone has questions and ideas. So that's why it's important that we have all the Commissioners Court on board. We also, when we're talking to the cities, we want them to know what we're doing and hearing them. So it's all like everyone knows sort of this is what's going on. So once again, this has really been a good leg up to say, like, we've identified what needs to be done. Both our partner cities sort of know what we're doing, and we've included them in the process. And so getting your subdivision regulations updated should be a good process, and so you already have your path moving forward. So with that,
what's the with regard to that, what's the process of getting development and engineering community feedback on what we're seeing here?
Yeah. So when we did the stakeholder interviews back in July, we had a good meeting with them. We probably had, and Connor and David, 10 people, 10 developers in that room. So that had a lot to say. We really appreciated it. They spent, an hour and a half with us or so it was at the end of the day, so that was nice. They were able to stay a little bit longer. They sent us comments afterwards as well, just to, here, this is what I'm thinking. So I think they're all on board with having a good set of standards. And making sure there's alignment between what we were talking about and also what the cities are trying to achieve. And so the general feeling that we get from them is say, let us know what the rules to the game are, let us know the process, and let us go. And then we're generally going to follow whatever. Well, we will follow, not generally follow. We're gonna follow what the standards are. We just want to know what they are, know what to expect, and get quick turnarounds. And so we think process improvements that we can make sure that are clear in here, working with staff and working with the city staff as well, because once again, even if when we update our subdivision regulations, the other element that's going to have to sort of be worked on is those interlocals as well with your different with your partner cities.
Yeah. What's the process, I guess, of making them making this information that we're seeing here available to them?
We can now that if you're good with this report, and what we could do is through county staff, we could share it with the cities and just let them know this is what we identified, and what we're going to do as a county is to update our subdivision regulations.
Yeah.
And so we have a clear set of standards, and so we say, these are our regulations for Brazos County, and this is what we think is best moving forward. So we have all our processes down.
Yeah, because the issues I see are, obviously the ILAs need to be a part of this, and we need to get up to speed from 2002.
Yeah.
But the other is the dynamic that's going on created by Senate Bill 2038 and the ability to be able to petition. In our county, we have two totally separate perspectives on that between the two cities. And, there's speculation that there'll be legislation that'll just, next session, that'll totally do away with ETJs. There's also, you can't tell, but that's a pretty big ball up in the air relative to not just who has the authority, but where the authority exists.
So here's a big thing for y'all to consider, because, and I'm going to give you sort of two scenarios here, because why it's important to have your subdivision regulations up to date and exactly what you want, because exactly what you just said, because the legislature could come and easily abolish ETJs, because really what's the purpose anymore if we're not going to allow the cities really to annex into there. Now what happens if they abolish ETJs, the cities will have no control. Their subdivision regulations will no longer apply because there's not an ETJ for them to apply to. So let's just pretend all those thousands of acres, and I don't know the exact number of acres, but all those acres in the ETJ now will all fall under, right up against their city limits, will fall under what we as a county regulate in our process. So no longer is it going to those cities through their approval planning process, and it's all coming to the county staff and to you guys. And so we sort of got to be prepared for that. I would think, and then because that very legitimately can happen. Now they may not.
Who knows? I mean, it's the legislature, and there's no telling what's going to come out of that. But I do know that that's currently creating, at least in Precinct 1, some real significant issues with people who are developing and who are planning to develop because of the City of College Station's ETJ extending 5 miles beyond their city limits. And, and it creates a problem for us is what part of and there's a lawsuit involved, so what part of the ETJ do we have? I mean, is it in the ETJ? Is it not in the ETJ? If they follow the Senate Bill 2038 process and petition out, are they really out? Or is the law invalid because Senate Bill 2038 did not repeal the original ETJ legislation? And then that's what's up in the air, and that's not going to get worked out, but I'm sure it's going to be a topic of action as well as discussion in the next session coming up.
Yeah. So we have, fortunately our no one has a crystal ball, unfortunately, but we don't know what that's going to look like, because maybe they do sort of change course, and maybe the pendulum swings to say, like, okay, maybe we went too far and we're going to give cities their ETJ back, and so our conversation sort of changes then, where it's like, yes.
Maybe they limit the extent, the size of the ETJ.
Yeah.
Because ETJs were all granted, and the rules for ETJs all came about prior to the legislation that diminished the ability of a city to annex. It has to be voluntary now, or it's been voted on. I don't know of any annexations that have been actually, hey, we're going to annex you, you're going to have to vote on it, that have actually happened in the state of Texas. My guess would be is very few. Have there been any? Well, now voluntary, I understand, but the case is what about a involuntary annexation? It's just not happening. See, all those rules for the ETJs, as far as boundaries go, went into effect prior to the annexation legislation that's happened over the past 3-4 sessions that have limited the ability of a city to annex.
Yeah. Yeah, because the only involuntary annexations left are some, or originally were if we had, the cities had infrastructure plans and different agreements and things like that. So it was very, very few, even with the latest round of changes. But when the most recent came, you know,
Well, if it was a
virtually
mud,
gone.
if it was
Yeah.
a mud, I know that there's some muds that are, subject to annexation once the equivalent tax rate balances. I think that was part of the discussions for Southern Point when Southern Point went in. But that's, is that going to happen or not? I mean, anyway, but I mean, there's no telling what's going to happen in this next legislative session, but we're clearly going to get some decisions made, I would think.
And I think that's sort of up in the air, but with your updating the interlocal agreements with your two big cities, you'll sort of need to, that will be a process, because once again, there's a lot of people involved in that. I think getting your subdivision regulations in the correct order that you guys would want, because in the back of our mind, we sort of know, yes, the legislature could hit us with, no ETJs, just so we're prepared for that.
Or limit the size of them.
Or limit the size, but hopefully they don't, and because with our partner cities, they provide a lot of valuable resources with being able to review and look at, and there's a good partnership there. But once again, updating those interlocals do take time, because once again, you want the two staffs to really agree, because when we get those to the elected leaders, hopefully they'll say, staff, are you good with what you've worked out with the county and what you've worked out with the city? And hopefully if they say yes, that gets us a big step of the way. Still there's, the politics of like, oh, do we want to, partition some of the ETJ. I mean, there's ideas that can happen, but there's a little bit when we get to the two bodies, the court and the councils. Can we all agree what's best moving forward? So that can't ever guarantee. Like, it's difficult to say like we're going to get that done in 2 meetings or 3 when it's like we don't know.
So in 2002, I think when that interlocal was done, I mean, I wasn't on the court, but the cities had more power in the ETJ than the county did. And I think that's why the county then just gave pretty much everything except drainage over to the cities. And I think, I'm not sure about the exact year, but I think it was 2007, that the legislature changed the law and pretty much mirrored what the county's authority is outside the city limits as to what was already given to cities some years before. The problem that I've seen since then is that the city imposed a lot of things outside the city limits that the county had no authority to impose. They kind of took it, well, we got the authority to do it here, we just will require it out there. Some of those may have been good, maybe some of them weren't so good, I don't know. But that's really what I'm not sure about, is with this subdivision regulation, and you talked a little about whether we kind of adopt what the city's regulations are, or we adopt what the counties are. And I guess what I'm not sure about is all of those kinds of things, do we even have the authority to do a lot of that? And that's really where I think the discussion should be.
And you do, when we talk about, like, for example, a good example is street ties. We're working with a different county where they are updating their interlocal agreements, and in the ETJs of their different cities, they want the county roadway standards to be followed. The right-of-way, in those situations, they're asphalt streets, so they're not, you can do curb and gutter under some different situations, but they're looking at, here's our maintenance, this is what we're familiar with. The opposing argument to that is, yes, county can always hire contractors to do concrete streets and things like that, so there's a little bit, the nice thing about doing subdivision regulations is we have 254 counties and 254 ways we can do this, and you know, there's not one right answer, because we've got to figure out the answer for the locality. But so you can take a look at those interlocals to say, like, does it make sense really to have the city standard out here, because we really think this is going to be a county area, this is really going to be county maintained, you know, so what is really the best path moving forward for this part of the city's ETJ. So, but like I said, you'll get different opinions, because the city may be more in favor of saying, no, we really like to have this, and it is a little bit of a change from the precedent of what's been done in the past. But once again, you know, one of the big questions in the air is, you know, do ETJs get taken away? Do they become smaller? You know, those type of things we won't know till the next legislative session. And even then, we wouldn't know, because they'll meet again in 2 years. So it's difficult to know what we're gonna have sort of thrown at us as a county. So, but in the ILAs, that's where we'd sort of look into that, say, like, because hearing from the developers out there, and what you may hear and what county staff may hear, is it sounds like, I am not in this city. Why am I forced to follow their regulations? And from a higher level policy place between the counties and the cities, it's a good question to have a conversation about, like, what really makes sense.
In essence, I think part of the legislation that's come up with Senate Bill 2038 is why should a city have a authority in an area of the surroundings of their city that they're never going to annex? It'll never happen. So, I mean, we'll tune in when the gavel goes down, you know.
Yeah.
But other question is will this be as a draft? I know it's a draft. Will this be available for the public, and particularly development public, to be able to look at and review somewhere off of Brazos County's website?
Now that you've seen it, and we can take your
I mean,
your direction.
it is a public document
Yes.
now, but I guess the question is what access will people have to be able to look at this?
We can, if we're okay with putting it on the county web, we can look into that. We hadn't planned on doing it, but it's not a secret document or anything. We want to make sure you're okay looking at this before we let, you know, because we put something in here you weren't in agreement with. We don't want you getting a lot of questions about.
I'd like to see stakeholder have another opportunity to take a look at this, and
Before we post it.
before we, before October 10th, anyway.
I mean,
Yeah.
yes. Or at
So
least
however
let's
we
make it
make it
available and make it known that this is where we're headed.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, but being part of the minutes isn't the same thing as putting it on the website and saying, hey, this is the draft of this. So, I mean,
Rathon and I can coordinate and see if we can maybe get it
Yeah.
yeah.
get it on the website and see if anyone wants to comment. We could put, I don't know if you want to put your email. We'll volunteer to have our email if you don't want to have all the emails come to you, but maybe it's best to have your email, or we could say, we could set up something so people can at least email in a question and try to, but we'll defer to however you want to do that. So.
Thanks.
Great.
And thank y'all for your work.
Yeah, it's important for Brazos County. It's important for Texas. It's important to, you know, we're going to continue to grow, and we want to get development right here in Texas, because this is setting up, you know, once these roads are in place, they don't really move. So we want to make sure it's done right.
So, well, I know from a legislative perspective that counties, particularly urban counties, are going to be following and addressing and supporting or not supporting legislation that comes up in the next session, and that has an impact.
All right.
Thank y'all. We appreciate you coming in, and we're looking forward to moving on with it.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
The workshop, 10:49, and we'll adjourn.
Realize discuss the potential unfunded mandate